This is the first time the Bush twins are speaking out since their grandfather's death. They're celebrating his life and sharing really special memories of the man they shared with the world.
We just think about how he made us feel, and that was loved, really loved, and how he made our family feel like we were one and that really we should support each other. Family really was the most important thing, and I know that people say that, but he lived it. He lived it by babysitting us when we were little first graders living down the street from here in Washington, D.C., even though he had a debate the next day.
Even as little kids, Jenna and Barbara were painfully aware of the criticism their grandfather faced, but still, they knew the man behind the presidency.
When we lived here in D.C., when we were in elementary school, we have this vivid memory of going to the grocery store. I was with my mom and I saw the cover of Newsweek that said wimp and had a picture of my grandpa next to it. It confused me, it confused us, because he was the antithesis of a wimp. He was somebody that showed us that family matters. He never was looking at work when we were next to him. He was present. He played with us. He made us feel special. He spoke softly and he didn't speak about himself. He was humble. But why did that have to equate to being a wimp? And it didn't to us. He was our hero.
Setting an example of grace and fortitude through the good times and bad. And in his final summer on the rocky coast of Maine he loved so well, the greatest gift, cherished time together.
I went up there with him, and it was so wonderful to have so much time just with him. It was just us. And I would read to him during the day, and particularly read to him love letters that he had written to my grandmother, or to his mom talking about how much he loved my grandmother when they were young, when they were just dating. And he would be in his chair and his eyes would be closed, and so I'd try to wrap up my reading thinking that he'd fallen asleep. And instead, every time I would try to wrap up, he'd say, "Go on, go on." And he just had his eyes closed because I think he was picturing what I was reading to him.
Do you know what your earliest memory is of your grandfather?
It's hard to decipher if this is my earliest memory or if it's just because there's photos to document it. But he came to Midland to visit us in Texas, and he was vice president when we were born. So he had a political rally, and we went, and I lifted my skirt. But he never made us feel like anything we did was shameful or he was embarrassed by us. And believe me, there were plenty of times. I remember him saying at the inauguration, we'd bought some shoes with high heels when we were 18 and we could barely walk in high heels. We were teenagers. We were just trying to pretend like we didn't know what to do, how to be the first daughters. We were like, I guess we have to wear high heels. And so we were walking in the Capitol, could barely walk. I remember my feet were killing me. And he looked at my grandma and he said, so he could laugh, "Girls, do you know how to walk in those shoes?" And he was doing that because he wanted to make us laugh and feel like this fishbowl of a life was normal. And we did. We felt that. He made fun of our shoes.
People ask me a lot what my favorite memory with my grandfather is, and it's impossible for me to choose because I have thousands and thousands of memories with him. We would spend the whole summer with him during our childhood when he was president, and yet he was carrying an incredible responsibility at that time. And it amazes me that he was so with us and so present, and I have so many memories just playing and being with him, and none of them did he ever need to cut playing with us short because of work. We knew that we were important to him because that's how he acted.
When you think about what you want to tell your kids, his great-grandkids, about him, like how could you even put it into words?
Well, I feel so lucky that my kids got to know him. Mila will remember him, and Poppy was named after him, which is the biggest blessing. Yesterday, Mila goes, "Poppy, you know that you were named after the best man in the world, don't you?" And of course, I had to go hide in the kitchen and cry, but it's true. And Poppy may not remember him, but she has his name, and I hope she will know that it comes with the responsibility that that he felt to give back and to make this world a better place and to show that love is a strength.
A celebration of a remarkable life, a man steadfast in his faith and family.
I mean, there's joy in it too, and how proud we are of him. How grateful that we got to spend time with him and see what grace looks like. That all is why we cry, but we know he was ready. And he was confident. I mean, he said it, of where he was going the day he died. He said he knew he was ready to go to heaven. That provides great relief for us all. Mm-hmm. And that he had so many people he wanted to see.
It was great to spend some time with Jenna and Barbara, and I saw her folks for a little bit yesterday, and they were just as you would expect, full of laughter, some tears, but just mostly grateful for such a wonderful life. And Barbara has said before, she thinks that every grandchild, if you asked, would say, I was his favorite grandchild, because he made everyone feel like that. And I've heard other people say across this country, there are hundreds of people who say, I was George Bush's best friend, because he made them feel that they were the most important person. And so that's a huge part of his legacy beyond politics.
I'm just struck at how watching that just makes you want to be a better person. I mean, you cannot believe how many life lessons are in that short piece right there. That was beautiful, Savannah.
The fact that he was so apparently present with all of his grandchildren, despite being vice president and president of the United States. It's
amazing.
Remarkable.
It really is. And guys, this is going to be a day of remembrance, and I think it'll be an emotional service, but not a sad one, because they feel so confident about where he is now. And NBC News will have special coverage of this morning's memorial service right here at the National Cathedral. But for now, we'll send it back to you guys.
All right, Savannah,
Thanks,
thank you so much for all of that.